a major work. Welcome to Gouch. A lot of people in my life were sceptical when I told them about the concept for this series. "We don't care about films," they said. "Your mother and I have decided we can't support your lifestyle any longer." And I suppose that's fair enough. I mean, there hasn't been a truly great film since 2005. But things change, and maybe one day my stepdad won't be calling me a boring loser with zero social skills and a persistent body odour. Maybe instead, he'll be calling me a visionary director. This kind of thing has happened in the past. No, it has. Alright, to prove that it has, today's topic is... the New Hollywood. The New Hollywood refers to an era between 1967 and 1981 when directors, not studio executives, dominated the American film industry. New Hollywood films were violent, profane, and sexually frank.
Oof, Jesus Christ.
They dealt with the overall decline of American society in the 1970s. The New Hollywood emerged after a period of stagnation in the American film industry. By the 1960s, many of the executives at Paramount, Fox, MGM, and Warner Brothers had been in place since the days of silent cinema. In a decade of rapid social and political change, that longevity became a liability. The movies that these executives favoured were big-budget musicals or comedies. These films were cheerful, family-friendly, and totally out of step with the fractious mood of the times.
I feel it'll be a film which all the family, including the animals, are going to want to see.
Movie attendance hit an all-time low. It was time for a changing of the guard. Titans of the industry like Jack Warner were shuffled off into honorary positions. Younger men, like Austin Powers, took their place. Despite that, the films didn't change much. Studio pictures were still as big and as stupid as ever. But unlike their predecessors, these new executives understood the commercial power of the burgeoning counterculture, particularly after the success of Easy Rider in 1969. Warner Brothers hoped to copy that success with Francis Ford Coppola, a recent graduate of UCLA Film School. Coppola's big dream was to establish an independent studio, American Zoetrope. This would be a collaborative space where filmmakers could work together on smaller, more personal projects. Coppola saw the deal with Warner's as a step towards achieving that dream.
It's going to fall by its own weight. It cannot fail.
But the two films Coppola delivered lacked the immediacy of Easy Rider. His own movie, The Rain People, was an introspective drama. He also produced George Lucas's THX 1138, a mood piece set in a dystopian future. Neither met the studio's commercial expectations, and so the deal was abandoned. Coppola was forced to take on a studio project to cover the already considerable costs he'd run up at Zoetrope. Paramount Pictures fought Coppola's vision every step of the way. For a while, it looked like he'd be fired from the film. Against expectations, however, he turned in a masterpiece. The Godfather was a major success story, the highest grossing film of 1972 and the winner of Best Picture at the 1973 Oscars. On the surface, it was easy to see the appeal. The performances were instantly iconic, the dialogue endlessly quotable.
"I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse."
But what distinguished The Godfather was Coppola's attitude towards the material. In his hands, a pulpy bestseller about the mafia became a dark meditation on the American dream.
"You found paradise in America. You had a good trade, made a good living, police protected you, and there were courts of law. But you didn't need a friend like me."
It was as much a reflection of the Nixon era as Easy Rider had been for the counterculture, and it marked an important turning point. Other directors like William Friedkin and Peter Bogdanovich also created subversive takes on much-loved genres, and, as a commercial strategy, it paid off. Between 1972 and 1977, New Hollywood films broke box office records. The success of these movies allowed the studios to subsidise riskier films like Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver or the work of Robert Altman. The influence of European and experimental cinema was profound, acting as a counterweight to the dead formalism of the old Hollywood. The actors who starred in these films also represented a break with the past. The archetypal old Hollywood lead was conventionally attractive, but in the new Hollywood, the Aryan look fell out of favour. Instead, many of the best actors of the era looked like the kind of people you would pass on the street, or even cross the road to avoid. Take Robert De Niro, for example. Framed in a certain way, he could be handsome, but he was just leery enough to be convincing as a petty criminal,
What's your name again, Dom?
a damaged Vietnam veteran,
I got some bad ideas in my head.
or the first ever influencer.
Too bad you don't have a lens. You need a lens. You can't. What are you gonna work with that piece of crap?
De Niro, like many of his peers, was a method actor, choosing to live as his character in order to build a more convincing performance. This approach complemented the realism that many new Hollywood directors were striving for. The famous mirror scene in Taxi Driver is a good example, and was largely De Niro's invention.
You talking to me?
It would therefore be misleading to say that the new Hollywood was entirely a director's movement. Like any movie at any time, these films depended on the chemistry between director, actors, and crew.
Where are you sitting? Down there? Why? Why is he down there?
By the late 70s, however, many of the leading directors had forgotten that fact and had started to listen to the hype, with disastrous consequences. Sorcerer, filmed on location in the Dominican Republic, went massively over budget due to tensions between William Friedkin and his crew. Over in the Philippines, Coppola's Apocalypse Now was turning into a slightly less dramatic reenactment of the Vietnam War. Perhaps most notorious was Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate. This film was re-edited multiple times, still came in at over 3 hours, cost $44 million, and made only $5 million back at the box office. That's fucking badass. But sadly, the executives didn't see it that way. Just like in the late 60s, there was another course correction, only this time the executives had found a sure thing. George Lucas had always been one of the more ardent new Hollywooders. He'd only made Star Wars to prove that he could do a commercial movie, and was taken aback when it became a global phenomenon. The film was a miracle of modern special effects, but the real innovation was the deal that Lucas cut with 20th Century Fox. His fee to direct the film was nominal, but he managed to negotiate control over merchandising and sequels, two areas that Hollywood had rarely shown much interest in. Lucas was able to leverage this into a fortune, and executives realised where the real money lay.
Star Wars large-size action figures, up to 15 inches tall.
The current filmmaking landscape is very much a consequence of the failures of the new Hollywood. While edgy, independent fare is still out there, budgets are vanishingly small, and distribution is often limited to video on demand. Never again will we see the equivalent of $123 million spent on an epic about rollerblading in the Old West. And you'll forgive me for saying so, but I think that's a fucking disgrace. Maybe it's time we started looking for the spirit of New Hollywood somewhere else. Maybe the Coppola of today is a presidential reply guy, or a gamer girl charging $30 a go for some bathwater. Or maybe, just maybe, he's a rising vlogger with a huge knowledge of cinema and a unique approach to personal hygiene. That last one I said, that's meant to be me, by the way. Did you enjoy that episode of Gouch? If you did, hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow me on Twitter at Gouch. Thank you for watching.